What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Hope you had a great Father's Day. Hope you had a great weekend. Did a couple weekend shows this weekend, including yesterday, wrapping up all the official visits with Sebastian Font. He was out there interviewing kids, so he gave the latest on that. So check that one out if you haven't seen that already. I will be doing some digging for the bank. I usually like to wait a day or two, let the dust settle from other visits. That should be out sometime later this week, probably in the next couple days. And today, we're talking about some showdowns, man. Number one program in the country the last few years has been the Georgia Bulldogs, and Miami is going toe-to-toe with them on numerous big recruits, and I think they're in a position to potentially win a few, if not most of those battles. We'll see. It's going to be fun to watch. We'll break those down as we get on the show. First, talk about some folks that win their battles. That is Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in here.
Good morning, D.
How we doing?
Doing good, man. I hope you had a good Father's Day. I'm excited to get to this recap. Not really a recap of the weekend, because a lot of these guys will be talking about still kind of not gathering information from last week, their visits last week, but like we've talked about, the immediate effects of these visits aren't always shown, a day or two after they get back home from their visits. The week and weeks after those visits are very important. So we have a bunch of updates on those guys today.
Yeah, we'll just break it down, kind of the how Miami is going toe-to-toe with Georgia, how we stand in some of those battles. Again, still digging for info. I mean, I have educated thoughts on these players, but I like to let the dust settle a little bit before saying, hey, he's leaning here and there after his visit, just because that's how these things work. But I'll give you the best information I have right now. Some new info that's public I wanted to talk about real quick before we get to Georgia. Lamar Brown, number one defensive lineman in the country, number one offensive lineman in the country, depending where they rank him. He just he's not committed anywhere. He had a visit scheduled to LSU. He's a Baton Rouge native. His school is right on LSU's campus, and he has decided to cancel his LSU visit, which I guess would have been just like going to school, right? He's canceled that visit, and it looks like it's going to be one of his three teams that he's officially visited: Texas A&M, Texas, and the University of Miami. We've been saying on this show that we thought that Texas A&M was, even though he's obviously on LSU's campus, we thought that Texas A&M would be the biggest competition for Miami. Miami has made a strong push in this recruitment. I still get the sense A&M might be more likely here, especially the fact that he canceled this visit coming off Texas A&M, but Miami is in the mix. So, hey, welcome to the show, JL Payne, man. Appreciate you. New on social media at 47. I feel the same way. I don't know how to use any of this stuff either. I have to ask Pete for everything. But yeah, man, a lot of stuff going on here.
Yeah, I think that this is kind of, we'll probably talk about this a bit. I know you talked about Calvin Russell yesterday on the show, but I think this is a bit like the situation at wide receiver where I just don't see them being able to land both a Lamar Brown and a James Johnson, just like I don't see them being able to land a Keys and a Russell. Just how I think the situation will kind of shake out. But yeah, I think James Johnson would be out of those two the guy that you definitely have a better chance with right now.
That was the impression I got going into the weekend. Again, that doesn't mean you're not working hard on Lamar Brown, and that doesn't mean you're still not pushing. And look, Miami had kind of ups and downs with Jackson Cantwell. At some point, there was some misinformation going on, but even before the misinformation started, there were still some internal questions about, hey, is this guy, are we losing this guy? Is he, he's not responding kind of as quickly as he used to respond. I mean, that was a real thing before the misinformation kind of campaign started. So these things go up and down, especially these big time recruitments like a Lamar Brown and Jackson Cantwell, Tristan Keys, et cetera. So we'll see how that one plays out. That's going to be definitely one to watch here down the stretch. I think Texas A&M is the one that, if you're Miami, you're watching close, but Miami's going to make that push here.
Jake asks, how valuable is an LSU visit if he's living on campus? He has bag up tendencies. If he's not taking an official there, I would be pretty shocked if he doesn't go there. I mean, if he
Yeah.
goes there,
Yeah.
I mean, no matter how close you live, if you have a kid in Miami who is a local target that doesn't come to Miami, even though it's not on Miami's campus, but it's close enough, you're not going to land that kid. I would not read too much into his, social media antics here. I think that based on what I think we know right now, A&M's in a very good spot. And we said this before this cancellation of the LSU visit. I think Miami, although they were recruiting him, they were getting the sense A&M was kind of in the lead there.
Yeah, that's the sense. And look, it's a long process. I know there's guys that Miami's recruiting that, we talked about Calvin Russell yesterday. That one could go down to past the bell. So anytime you got a local kid, it goes to the wire there. So that's what Kevin Dennis is saying. He'll take an official in November. Going to be too much pressure from both sides. That's kind of how these things tend to go when they're local. They're down to the final whistle. Jeremiah Smith was a buzzer beater for Ohio State, even though they had him committed the whole time and had a lot of advantages. So wait and see. Texas A&M also is very liable to have a pretty bad season. LSU could have a bad season. Then the opposite is true, right? So these are all things that could give you windows to get in that mix.
So who do you want to talk about next here, D?
Let's get into these Georgia battles, man, because one thing I thought was interesting with the way this is shaping up is that Miami is going toe-to-toe with Georgia on a lot of kids. And I didn't realize really – I saw Gabby made a post about a couple of those battles, and I just kind of going down the line. It was really, when you really look at the list, it's a lot of battles between Miami and Georgia. And I think Miami so far is doing pretty good. So let's start really at the top, which is Derek Cooper, who was visiting Georgia this week and now I believe going to take a midweek visit to FSU. He is I don't know if he's a 5-star on most services. He's treated like a 5-star, certainly, from Chaminade Madonna High School in Broward County. So that's one that if you're Miami, Chaminade, you think immediately about losing Jeremiah Smith. You did win JoJo Trader from there. You had Thad Franklin, didn't work out. So you've had some wins at Chaminade.
Zaquan Patterson was another big win at the time.
Yeah, so Kevin Dennis saying Cooper just got to FSU, so he's taking that visit. Not worried about that at all. FSU is a disaster. But this is a guy who runs a 10-7. Talked about, I've seen him in person. This is 6'1", 210. Georgia's after him hard. But, and as I pull up my window here, pulling up CanesInSight. So again, CanesInSight.com, 7.44 million posts and counting. Check it out and you'll see just a ton of action on, this Derek Cooper thread has got hundreds of replies. But as you see right there, my guy H-Town Kid, one of the better posters around, he posted from 247 that this is the Georgia 247. So we got spies everywhere on other team sites. And he's saying this is the report from Georgia 247 after Derek Cooper's visit there this weekend. Derek Cooper was a major target. He's already on the road to FSU for a midweek OV there. Wouldn't be surprised to see an answer there shortly after the visit, and Miami is trending. So that's
one day I'll get you to mute the audio on the screen share.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. I'll figure that one out. We'll work on that after the show. But that's one of those situations where Miami was leading, I think, going into the visit. Miami felt very, very good coming out of their official visit, really going into their official visit. Then the official visit escalated things. Now you're keeping your eye on Georgia because it's Georgia. They've won a lot of big-time recruiting battles under Kirby Smart, certainly. But it looks like Derek Cooper goes over there and doesn't get blown away. At least those are the initial reports. So given that he's coming back down south, of course, at Tallahassee now, but ultimately coming back home to Broward County, you had the lead going in. You didn't lose the lead, at least according to what Georgia's saying. I think you got to feel pretty good about where you stand for Derek Cooper, which would be a huge recruiting win over the Georgia Bulldogs.
Who's next?
All right, let's go to another running back here, Jay Lamar. Jay Lamar, running back out of Moultrie, Georgia. This is Colquitt County. This is where you got Nye Carr. This is where you got Kamal Bonner, the transfer from NC State. Nye Carr was out of town this weekend, but Kamal Bonner was on campus to show Jay Lamar around. I mean, this is really an incredible talent, man. I think this guy, just on talent, he's up there with everybody. When you talk about the lateral quickness, the size, the speed, he's got the total package. I didn't realize this, and I don't know if this is true or not. I read this on CanesInSight. I got to do some more digging. Apparently, he didn't even play football at times early in his high school career. Was just kind of dealing with stuff off the field. Really turned his life around and has been, outstanding. Obviously, he's got offers from everybody in the country. So this is just someone who's been rolling up the rankings with a rocket. Number 8 running back in the country right now. Has visited Miami twice unofficially, and now the third time officially. Talking to Sebastian Fon, who interviewed him after the visit, he was like, man, this guy was talking like a cane. Seemed like we made a very, very good impression on him. I know that's the initial buzz coming out of just sources that Miami really made a strong move with the official visit. He's scheduled to visit Georgia next week. There's some questions as to whether he'll follow through. My guess is that he'll follow through. But if you're battling Georgia for Cooper and Jay Lamar, the ultimate dream is to go 2 for 2 on that one. So that would be absolute dream. You follow the visits and you follow the personal connections, 2 very important factors in recruiting I've found. There's a lot of personal connections between Lamar and Miami, and then he's been on campus a bunch of times. So those 2 things are very, very promising. Jalen Benjamin's correcting me. He says, pronounce Colkit, not Colkit. Thank you, Jalen. I appreciate that. I got to work on that. Colkit there, Pete.
Call quit, I think he's saying.
Call quit. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Call quit. Call quit. Call quit. Hopefully, Georgia.
I'm a big fan of Lamar, D. I think it just seems like it's trending towards Mallory exiting the class and Lamar being a part of it, just reading the tea leaves. Would you say that's accurate?
Well, look, I don't think Miami's happy that Mallory went and visited Alabama, and it's the whole, you're looking, we're looking sort of thing. Miami really likes Mallory. That's why he's committed. But, look, if he's in Alabama, Jay Lamar is here, right? And Cooper is obviously going to be a big priority no matter what. So I think a dream scenario, you could add 2 top 10 backs in the country with Jay Lamar from Colquitt County and with Derek Cooper from Broward County. You're feeling very, very good. And I'm a victim of this too. We have this mentality of, hey, listen, it's Georgia. They're going to get the top backs in the country. They had Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. They're recruiting top 10 running backs every single year, right? It feels like. So if you're going against Georgia, you're going to lose. But the truth is, when you really look at Georgia and you look at their running game last year, it was extremely poor. And that was with Travis Etienne. Is it Travis or Trevor? Which is the one that just got drafted this year? I mixed them up.
Trevor.
You have Trevor Etienne, who is, to me, one of the better backs around in the SEC last year on talent. He kind of reminds me of Jordan Lyle. I see a lot of similarities between those 2 backs. But Etienne, who was drafted in the 4th round, that's 3 rounds ahead of Damian Martinez. They had him, but yet you look at rushing yards per carry. Miami's 5th in the nation, 5.6 rushing yards per carry. Number 2 in Power 4. Then you scroll to Georgia, you got to go all the way down to number 84. So 5th in the nation in yards per carry versus number 84 in the nation in yards per carry, despite having a very talented back. So if you're a running back, you say, man, no matter how good I am, I can still struggle to run here. And maybe Etienne should have been a 2nd-round pick instead of a 4th-round pick, right? You go to rushing yards per game, which, remember, Miami had the number 1 offense in the country last year. And number 1 passing offense, the best passing offense by far in terms of efficiency. Even with that, Miami still ran for 186 yards a game, 27th in the country. Georgia, you got to scroll all the way down to 102nd in the country. So when you look at the running games, the conventional wisdom says Georgia running back, obviously. But I don't think that's necessarily the case in 2025, especially when you get into these offensive linemen, which we'll talk about in a second. Jay Campbell saying the next pronunciation I always get wrong is Mobile, Alabama, not Mobile for Mobile, Alabama.
You've been better on it. You've been better on it lately. I feel like you used to be really bad with it. Now you're like 50-50.
We've recruited enough kids from there that I had to learn. So we could do a whole show on these mispronunciations.
EJ says, if we can't get Keys and Russell or Brown and Johnson, why isn't that the case with the running backs? I mean, look, can't is a strong word on those other things I've been talking about. I would say it's unlikely. Just the way that NIL crumbles. I just don't see that happening. With running backs, number one, I mean, listen, quite frankly, the NIL number is not as large on running backs. Cooper will have a big number because he's a 5-star. But you're gonna have 2 to 3 backs in this class. I personally, right now, as of what's today's date? This is June 16th, right? My guess would be Cooper and Jay Lamar in the class.
That'd be huge. That'd be huge, Pete. And look, I'm not saying you can't get Keys and Russell and you can't get Lamar Brown and James Johnson. I just wouldn't predict it just based on kind of the history of these things. But they're going to try. It's not like they're not going to try to get those guys or they're throwing in the towel.
And we've said this. It's not like if one guy, it's not like if a Tristan Keys commits that's it, they're done recruiting Russell. Or if a Russell commits, they're done recruiting Keys. Or same thing with the defensive lineman. It's just we have to be realistic with how these things shake out.
My guy Rob saying, let the money mispronounce things. I'm working, we get enough players from these guys. I'll learn. When you keep stacking guys from Mobile, Alabama, and Colquitt County, you're gonna get better pronunciations over time.
Kevin says, hopefully the Mallory situation doesn't mess up the relationship with West Boca. They've got good players. We need that 2027 D tackle. Look, this isn't like the old days where you hear about the staff having issues with local coaches and stuff. They want Mallory. We're not saying that they wouldn't have him in the class, but again, if the kid is wavering a little bit right now, then Miami has to line their options up as well. I don't think this is a situation where they're pushing the kid out the class. So I don't see where there would be any issue with the staff over there. But I don't know if you have any other opinion.
I agree totally, Pete. I mean, Mallory, they didn't tell Mallory to go visit Alabama. Mallory wanted to go visit Alabama, so he's looking, they're looking. That's just kind of college football. What else are you going to do? I think it's I don't think there's any issue there, but that's my guess and my understanding, but I haven't heard any issue, but it's a fair concern. West Boca is starting to become a team you want to be tight with. My guy Felix, good work, CanesInSight crew. Favorite part of football season, recruiting season. Man, our numbers during football recruiting season are crazy compared to we're undefeated and recruiting still getting more numbers, man. It's the biggest thing in the world. It's insane. Thank God for Mario. Thank God for his new calendar. I love this new calendar. We go straight from recruit season to portal to spring to portal to recruiting. There's no breaks. We'll be in camp soon. Rockstyle Monster saying, D-Money Pete, does 247 have Diabell as the best player in the state of Florida above Russell and Cooper? I did a check. I mean, I like Diabell. I think he's a good player. Pete, I know you've seen him too. I will say that the 2 full games I've seen of Diabell, I've seen him in camps. I like him. I like him. I think he's going to be good. I think, he's a high power 4 player, so I don't think he's like a bum at all. And South Florida quarterbacks of that stature, that pedigree, tend to do pretty well. So I think Diabell will be a good player. With that said, I've seen him 2 full games. I saw him against Luke Nickel and Milton beginning of this year, and I saw him against I forgot what other game I saw him. And then I saw Malachi Toney when he was hurt, replace him at quarterback. And Nickel outplayed him when they went head to head. And then when Malachi replaced him at quarterback in the state playoffs, Malachi was better than he was. So I'm not saying that means he's not going to be good. I'm just saying the times I've seen him, he's either been outplayed by a guy like Nickel, or when he's been on the bench, his backup, who's a receiver for Miami, was playing at a higher level than I had seen him play previously. So I'm not saying he's not going to be good. Not saying, in fact, I think he probably will be good. We've talked about South Florida quarterbacks over a certain, that are like 6'2" and above and had that power 4 pedigree. Those guys tend to be pretty good players. Look at Mendoza. You look at CJ Bailey. Those are the guys that have seen their value escalate before you even get into all the guys in the NFL who sort of outplayed their recruiting ranking. So we'll see with Diabell. I think he'll be pretty good, but best player in the state, I'm not sure if you count IMG. I definitely wouldn't say that. Some of these offensive linemen in the state, I think between, Pepe's a really good player. Joel Irvin, I know he's ranked. He just became a 4-star. I'd probably put Joel Irvin as the best prospect in the state just based on traits. Cooper's very good. Russell's very good. There's some good players here in the state.
Clutch 22 says, I think when people see JoJo and Tony this year, that whole narrative of not be able to land a South Florida wide receiver talent, an elite South Florida wide receiver talent, will quiet down a bit. I was talking to someone yesterday who, well. And the Malachi Tony buzz is legit right now in that building, man. I mean, I think we talked about who's going to be the starting slot receiver. Again, I don't know who it's going to be snap one against Notre Dame, but I will double down on my statement from the other day on Malachi Tony based on what I'm hearing, man. This is it's the work ethic on the field, right? Like with the coaches not around right now, but it's the work ethic off the field too, and like the film watching and the details that really matter at that position. So I'm 100% on board with Malachi being a guy this year. I think he's going to end up being one of Miami's, I'll say it right now, one of Miami's top two leading receivers this year.
Yeah, Pete, I agree with you. And that's a bold statement, right? When you think about Trader, CJ Daniels, all those guys, I agree with you. I think you said it. Off the field preparation, which at receiver is very important. And then just kind of like the feel, the instincts on the field, right? Because you can prepare all you want off the field. If you don't see it, you don't see the space, you don't have a feel for all those kind of things, you're not going to have success on the field, and vice versa. He has the both. He has the instincts on the field where when you put him on the field, just kind of knows where to go. He knows space. He knows angles. He knows how to help his quarterback. He was a quarterback. He was an incredible quarterback when he played in the state championship for American Heritage, just kind of showing his football instincts. And then he does all the stuff off the field. And we've always talked about it. To play as a freshman, the most important thing by far is IQ and attitude. And this guy's got the IQ. He's got the attitude. I agree. I think he will be a big-time player. And before we get into more of these Georgia battles, Pete, I want to ask you, you've been compiling some information this weekend. I know not all of it is fit for podcast, right? Deep background, we call it. But is there anything that you can share, just it could be general or more specific, that you picked up on this weekend as you were doing some digging?
I think there's a lot of confidence about the system that Beck's stepping into compared to what he was dealing with at Georgia, right? And we've alluded to this at times about the drop rate, and people inside Miami's building are definitely aware of that. But outside of the talent around the player, I think there's a belief that Shannon Dawson's system is just going to be a lot more beneficiary to Beck's skill set. And again, he's coming from Georgia where he was 24-3, right? That's kind of the thing that people inside the building continue to say is, look, this is a guy who went 24-3. What are we talking about here? In terms of, does he have the ability to take Miami deeper than it went last year, right? So lots of confidence there. I think the receiver room, of course, is inexperience, but there's belief. There's belief in the talent in that room. CJ Daniels, I think, stepping up as a leader big time, which obviously what he can bring on the field. You go back 2 years ago, as we've talked about at Liberty, showed some amazing things. Some of the catches he was making down the field were very impressive. NFL buzz from that season. And then last year just wasn't healthy, as we've talked about. But I'm talking about talking to people inside the building. He's stepping up as a leader big time there. And then I just said it now, Malachi Tony. I think that was probably the biggest thing I took away from the one of the conversations I had this weekend. Canes Katsy, when I said that he could be one of our top two receivers, said that's bold and would be stunning. I think it's a bold prediction. I don't know if it'd be a stunning thing though, man. It's not like you're returning anyone who's put up big numbers last year. And I'm hearing good things about Daniels, but I just think Malachi Tony is going to be a security blanket in a sense for Beck.
Can we call this the work, Pete? Can we call this the return of the work?
I don't think we're going to do that. No.
Oh man. All right. Well, there goes my video idea. But yeah, no, I'm hearing a lot of the same stuff, Pete. I think with Beck, a lot of just good vibes. I think fit is a lot, timing's a lot, experience is a lot. These are things you consider when you talk about how things play out. And I think the fit, when you have a playing behind a great offensive line with a great running game after having neither of those things at Georgia, will help. I think the fit being in Florida, a place where he's comfortable, right? This is not, TBD and him often get compared because they're both quiet by nature compared to a Ward. And that's real. I mean, Beck is not going to act like Ward. He's just a different personality. But TBD is from Connecticut. He's almost a fish out of water here in the Southeast, whereas Beck is from Florida. So I think that, and played in Georgia, right, which is a similar type program here in the Southeast. So I think there's a lot more comfort there than you have with someone from just a total different part of the country that kind of keeps to themselves. Now, sometimes people from other parts of the country blend in perfectly. You look at the 80s and 90s, some of the guys we got from Pennsylvania or Ohio, whatever it was. But I think with TBD being more reserved plus being from a different place, that led to him being more isolated, whereas Beck is not as uncomfortable in the South. He's from here. He's from Florida. On top of that, I think the fact that he has that experience, the experience factor is huge in college. We've talked about it a ton. Experience wins games. Experience gets you drafted high. Experience allows you to succeed as a rookie in the NFL. We've gone down this list a million times between Daniels, between Nix, between now Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard, obviously Cam Ward, who started for 5 years. Experience makes a big difference. Beck's experience, just kind of the bounce back factor, right? He's got something to prove. He's not on social media like that. That whole kind of image is not really there, and is not going to be there, I don't think. So just a lot of things falling into place. And you mentioned a very important piece of it, P, which is the system being a much more quarterback-friendly system where, yes, he has enough IQ to run that pro-style offense of Bobo at Georgia. And in fact, that's one thing he's known for is he can call his protections. He can change the play. He can see things. He spreads the ball. He is a pro-style passer in that sense. That doesn't mean he's not going to do better in a quarterback-friendly system. Cam Ward was a computer. I mean, Cam Ward's IQ is off the charts, but that doesn't mean in a more quarterback-friendly air raid system he doesn't do damage, right? Just so I think the pro-style intelligence, but the ability to play in a more quarterback-friendly system, and then of course you're going against weaker competition. I think all those things together help when it comes to a Carson Beck.
Juan Manuel asking, did I miss something, or Pete has CJ Daniels number 1 and now Malachi Tony to be second leading receiver? Confused, no JoJo Trader. I'm not saying CJ Daniels is wide receiver 1. I think he's stepping up in that, I don't know what the production's going to be. I said this a few weeks ago. I think he has a good chance to be, as long as the health is there. But I've heard he's stepping up as a leader in that room, and guys look to him, right? So he's established himself in that sense. Very important. That room needed it with all the youth. I think JoJo probably is all around your best wide receiver. But my prediction, like I said, I'm not again, I didn't say CJ Daniels is a receiver 1, but I think your top 3 is probably those 3 in production once we look back on it after the season.
EJ saying TD's from Glastonbury. That's West Palm of Harford County for real. Or here we go. Clutch saying, asked about Josh Moore.
I heard something on him too, and the question is, does he have the best chance of replacing what Zay Horton gave us, or CJ? I think for this year, probably CJ. Ton of excitement about Josh Moore, but I think more of a flash guy right now. Midpoint of the season, as he continues to show consistency, without a doubt can be someone that is an impactful player for this team and is used situationally. But right now, I think he's someone that'll be more of a rotational player.
And by the way, one thing I would add to all this is we are looking at these receivers based on what they've done in workouts, and then also
without Carson
Beck in spring. So I think now that you have Carson Beck, who when you watch him at Georgia, he spreads the ball around. Obviously, he had elite weapons with Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers when he had his breakout year in 23. But there was injuries there too, so he didn't always have those guys. And even with those guys, and certainly last year when he had really no good options, he spreads the ball around. He's someone who finds the open receiver and throws it. He's not a one-read kind of quarterback at all. So that's something to keep an eye on.
Stephen Canes, this has the look of a troll comment here. But he says, "Why is it so quiet on Carson Beck starting where it's?" I mean, listen, no one that we're talking to has been quiet about it. They've been very positive, and I mean, I don't think there's much quietness about it. No players are talking to the media right now in the summer, so.
Yeah, and Steven's not troll. Steven just needs to watch the Canes Inside podcast more. So make sure you're liking and subscribing to the Canes Inside podcast. We're on every single day talking all this stuff, including the weekend, this weekend, and probably most weekends going forward. There is a lot of buzz on Beck, and Pete just kind of talked about some of it. I've been hearing the ability to throw the ball is catching. I mean, not only is he healthy, but now that people have seen his arm talent, there's significant buzz about his arm talent. There's significant buzz from the coaching staff about what he is capable of in meetings from an IQ standpoint. We talked about him fitting in well. And one thing that I've heard is that he's very, very athletic. Even at one point, he lined up at running back, just kind of messing around. It's workouts, and it was juking guys out. He's much more athletic, I think, than people think. He's not going to be Jalen Milroe or someone like that. But this guy was committed to Florida as a freshman in high school to play third base. He's very twitchy in his lower body, strong legs. He can move. I don't think he's going to be as dynamic outside the pocket as Cam Ward as far as like getting out and then making big plays throwing. Cam Ward just had that unique ability to see the angles like a basketball player. He was a star combo guard. He could really see the field. So I would say the difference between Beck and Ward, aside from their leadership style, is the big playmaking of Ward outside the pocket. But athletically, they're not that much different. I think in the pocket, they're very comparable as well. And I think Beck has a chance to be a really, really good player, as long as we're not comparing him to Ward every step of the journey.
Shout out to my boy Jason Gaitan. He says, in spring practice I attended, Tony is an elite slot wide receiver right now. Trader had an injury but seems like a baller, and Daniels definitely looks the part physically. 100%. This is from someone who was at practice. Shout out to Jason. Shout out to the Grape Ape in South Miami, man. Great spot.
Yeah, shout out to the Grape Ape. So with Tony, it's a slot-friendly offense too, man. I mean, you think of Tank Dell at Houston with Shannon Dawson. You think about Restrepo last year. You're talking about really, really dominant All-American receivers. So when you have that level of ability, and then you play in a system that's very friendly to slot receivers, you're going to put up big numbers. Which we got a question here from Jalen Benjamin. Is Malachi more like Zay Flowers, South Florida guy, or the Georgia Tech slot receiver from Miami, Malik Rutherford? Which past South Florida receiver would you compare him to? So it's funny you mentioned both those guys. Those are two kind of D-money specials. I've hyped a lot of guys that didn't do anything. Pete knows. But two guys that I did, I kind of flag early as guys I liked were Zay Flowers at University and Malik Rutherford at Champagnat. Just tough, quick guys. They had skill sets, in my opinion, translated to college, their ability to separate quickly and just high instinct players. For Malachi, I am not saying he's going to have this career. So please, when you hear it, don't say this is what the career is going to be, because that's not what I'm saying. However, I do see similarities in Malachi Tony's game with Antonio Brown. Not his dad is named Antonio Della Brown, but I'm talking about the other Antonio Brown, the one that played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the reason I make the comparison is similar size, not big guys, similar speed, I would say, probably more 4.5-ish type guys. Malachi, not going to be running 4.3 like a Santana Moss. Neither is Antonio Brown. Both win with quickness, instincts, and then incredible work ethics off the field. Now, I don't think Malachi has the same kind of emotional problems that Antonio Brown had over his career. Even early on in his high school career, he had off the field stuff. That's why he kind of went through the journey he went through and didn't go to like a big school. But I do see similar instincts on the field, and they both work really, really hard on their games. Antonio Brown at Miami Norland was a quarterback, and before switching to wide receiver punt returner, which is what you see with Malachi Tony. I would say that Antonio Brown, I think, is a little just naturally quicker. I mean, he just had a unique quickness to him. Returning punts to the house in college, I'm not sure Malachi Tony has that level of elite quickness, but I would say Malachi is probably a little stronger at the same age. So,
yeah, and like earlier, Canes Cats Heat, who is big on the reclassification, anti-reclassifying train, talked about how it would be a shocker for Malachi to basically be an impact guy day one because he reclassified. But again, this is a guy who, from what I understand, he went back into his class of his normal age, right? So it's not like these guys who reclassify and they're pretty much like not developed, as much as guys in their age range.
100%. And one thing that I think translates, we talked about it, IQ and instincts. So if he already has the IQ and the instincts and the work ethic, does the age really matter? I mean, the age is more about kind of acclimating, and this guy already has the mental part advanced. So physically, I think he'll be fine for his position. He's not going to be Restrepo, who's 200 pounds, jacked, but different kind of body. Still pretty strong, I think, naturally, but just, Restrepo worked hard on getting strong and was basically a running back by the time he was an All-American. But when it comes to Tony, yeah, I think the work ethic and the instincts and stuff like that is going to carry him pretty far as a reclass. And he was a guy that early on at American Heritage was the man. I mean, he was catching game-winning touchdowns as a freshman.
Freshman on ESPN, yeah. Doing interviews on the sideline.
Right. He's like been a guy, right? Local guys have talked about him. So it's not like he's not used to making that kind of early impact. Crazy Anthony says, why does it seem like every player who commits to Miami loses ratings? Yeah, I think obviously we talk about when that happens a lot. I know a lot of fans believe it. I don't believe that there's anti-Miami bias. My view is that I think 247 in particular just needs to do a better job with their ratings right now. And I have respect for those guys. I've listened to the Ivans Patagna podcast all the time. I've always thought they were kind of the best, the 247 as a group, especially when they had Barton Simmons running scouting, that they were the best one. But the numbers show that they're losing ground big time, and they struggled a lot as far as where their rankings were and the guys that got drafted last draft, which was a very blue chip heavy draft last draft. But the other scouting services were closer on the guys that got drafted for the most part. So I just think 247 has some questionable rankings. Joel Irvin, I've been complaining about for months. They finally did bump him up to a 90 overall, a 4-star player, which I think is a good start. I think ultimately he should be a top 100, top 50 type player just based on the rare measurables. But they're in the right direction there at least, but they started too low. Tyson Bacon, a guy who's 247's low, the low school service on Tyson Bacon. Hoover Matagna, who has that region, he was on the podcast. He said that he got a lot of calls from like local coaches, local guys to say, hey, you're too low on Tyson Bacon, move him up. So they'll get it. Let's see how it looks at the end of the year is I guess what I'm trying to say. And then we'll talk about it.
Question here, and then after this, we'll get back to the recruiting stuff. But question here from FTW305 MDC. He says, Jojo Trader seems eerily similar to Stacey Coley with the injuries. Hopefully he proves he can stay healthy. I think you might have used that body type comparison a few weeks ago. I think the difference here, just having been around the program when Stacey was here and talking to guys about it specifically who were here, I don't know that he ever took the nutritional side very seriously. I think, and the workout side, I think that JoJo's not that Coley wasn't a worker, but I think JoJo is very, very locked into what he needs to do. Coley never put the weight on throughout his career. I think we've already seen a jump. JoJo looks definitely stronger than what he came in at last year when he was dealing with some of these little nicks. But yeah, that would be probably the most recent comparison in terms of that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with the Stacey Coley, and Pete, I agree with everything you said. It's just, we'll see, right? Stacey Coley, don't forget, was a very productive wide receiver at the University of Miami. I think he's on our top 10 all time. I want to say
he burst onto the scene as a freshman, really.
And he got drafted. So Stacey Coley had a good career. I think people underestimate getting drafted, what that means. I think that's a major issue when people go day 3, we're like, oh, well, this guy stinks. It's like, yes, is there a difference between day 1, top 100, and day 3? Of course, there's a difference between all 3 of those levels. There's also a huge difference between day 3 and not getting drafted. 25% of 4 stars get drafted, right? So that means you're a top 25% of just the blue chips. So Coley was good here. I thought he was going to be great. I think when we saw that first play against Virginia Tech, we thought he was going to be great. I think the issue he had was exactly what you identified, Pete, which is what you hope that Trader can avoid. That's why the weight room is going to be this summer, the nutrition, all that stuff is going to be so big for JoJo Trader because he has a lot of the similarities to Coley as far as being smooth, being lanky, being very athletic, but same weakness as far as can he consistently hold up So it's going to be about getting that wiry strength built up. If he does that, I think he's got a chance to be our best receiver, but it's going to be about building up the strength. 1,300 on the stream. Like and subscribe to this show. Appreciate everybody that's tuning in.
So let's get back to recruiting, D.
Yeah, let's get back to recruiting. And we were talking about the slot receiver, and we talk about these Georgia battles. So let's go to the biggest battle for next week. This was a player that visited Georgia this week, and unless something changes that I'm not aware of, he will be visiting Miami next week for the second time after unofficially visiting in the spring. And that is wide receiver Vance Spafford. Now, this is an elite player, top 100 player, one of the most productive receivers in the country out there in Orange County, California. And the natural comparison people are going to say is, okay, well, he's a slot receiver you're recruiting. He's a white guy. We're going to compare him to Xavier Restrepo. Much different player. Spafford's much more similar to like a Tank Dell from Houston, because what Spafford has is the combination of all the slot receiver stuff, the quickness, the feel for space, the hands, the ability to go over the middle. But he combines all of that with legitimate 4.3 speed. You see it on this play. He's been timed 4.3 in camps. He runs the 100 meters. He is a legit 4.3 player. So Tank Dell would be my comparison for Vance Spafford in this Miami offense. So you see him playing outside. He can do that as well. Seeing him in person, though, I think slot's his best home. But he can't play outside because he is so fast. Someone you can move around. Visited Miami unofficially. He's a Georgia commit, I should say. Even though he's from over there in California, he's a Georgia commit. He is presently committed, just visited there. But look at the physicality, boom. He was a Georgia commit when he visited Miami unofficially. He said Miami was his best visit after that Georgia visit. So Miami was able to make that impression while he was already committed to Georgia. He just had an unofficial visit to Georgia. I'm sure it was great. But if you're Miami, you are selling him on, hey, you are going to be the next Tank Dell, a faster Restrepo. The production at the slot receiver position, if you are Miami, is huge. Of course, Ladd McConkey is going to be the name that George is going to throw around. It's just kind of how these things go. But I think Shannon Dawson has a great track record of featuring the slot receiver and putting up huge numbers, like All-American numbers at that slot receiver position. I mean, Ladd McConkey is a stud. He's going to be a stud anywhere. But I think being able to get that production out of a Tank Dell, who's a 3-star player, undersized, Xavier Restrepo is a 3-star player, had some speed deficiencies. That shows that, the system kind of elevates guys. These guys are very good on their own as well, but the system kind of takes guys to a new level. You put Vance Spafford's speed and instincts and production in there, I think you're going to have great success.
352 MLW says Spafford seems like a faster Cooper Kupp or Ladd McConkey. What gives you that idea?
Yeah,
remember, McConkey ran a 4.3, so
yeah. There's no difference in speed with McConkey. The thing with Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp's big. So McConkey, I've seen him in person. He's he's not like 5'8", but he's not a big guy, right? He's not a strong guy. He's built like a Tank Dell, maybe a little taller than a Tank Dell, but he's more that style of just body. And the speed is outrageous. So I think that's
Kupp 6'2", 205. So that's a big difference.
If Cooper Kupp ran 4.6 and he was one of the best receivers in the NFL, if Cooper Kupp had speed, he'd be like Jerry Rice. Although Jerry Rice also wasn't that fast, but you know what I mean. He'd be unheard of good, and he was already really good. McConkey, I could see the comp more there, but McConkey is a little like wiry, strong, a little stronger. I think if he's McConkey, man, you're in good shape.
And there's a comment here that says your favorite player must be Tank Dell from Albert. For those who are unaware, Tank Dell was the slot receiver for Shannon Dawson's Houston offense. So that's why the comparison is being made.
Thank you, Pete. Yeah, that's exactly right. So the reason I guarantee that,
and there's a guy that I recruited Tank Dell when he was coming out of high school out of Houston. Met with him a couple times. He was 160 pounds, soaking wet. So
coming out of college,
when I met with him like his senior year or junior year, whatever the last year he was in school.
Yeah, so I think that's where the Tank Dell comparison is something you're going to hear from Dawson when he's recruiting guys, because he's going to sell. Not only did Tank Dell have all the success he had in the pros, hopefully he bounces back. That injury looked terrific, but Tank Dell was the number one receiver in college, statistically. I think he had like 1,300, 1,400 yards. So he was extremely productive. So because of that productivity, Dawson, and then what Restrepo was able to do as a first-team All-America, what Dawson could say, and I think this is a credible sell, is this system is going to get you the ball down the field for explosive plays. One thing that people don't talk about with Restrepo, of course, he's compared to every white slot receiver under the planet, or like whether it's Welker, Edelman, the guy from Hunter Renfro, whoever it is. If you look at those receivers, I know Edelman played quarterback. If you look at the slot receivers like Amendola, those kind of guys in college, those guys were like 11 yards a catch, 10 yards a catch. They had a lot of yards, but they had short yardage, catches, and that's what happened in the pros as well. Restrepo was 16 yards a catch last year while getting well over 1,000 yards and well over 10 touchdowns. So that productivity is pretty unique, right? To have the combination of the high yards per catch and the high volume. That's like Jeremiah Smith. That's like Rome Odunze. It's like Marvin Harrison, those kind of guys. Yeah, so 1,127 yards, 11 touchdowns, 16.3 yards a catch. That's high-end production, and that shows you, I think, not just Cam Ward and his ability to throw downfield, Restrepo's kind of fit, ability to find space with Ward. I think it just shows that this system that Shannon Dawson has is able to get their slots downfield. A guy like Spafford, who already runs 4.3, that is very easy to see that fit. He visited Georgia this weekend. He's visiting Miami next weekend. I think there's a very good chance Miami can get this one done.
Yeah, Vic Vassell saying I want Jason Lopez.
Me too. So does Miami. I asked directly, I go, would Miami take Jason Lopez and Ben Spafford? The answer was yes. So different players too. Jason Lopez, basketball player, great at contested catches for not being the biggest guy. Just a great feel for space. More of an underneath guy. He's probably more
has some yak ability.
Yeah, he's probably more of your traditional slot, although he's not that small that he has to be a slot. But I'd say he's probably more your traditional slot. Spafford, I use Tank Dell comparison. If he's another one, not Tony Dorsett, Philip Dorsett. We used him in the slot a little bit to go downfield, and Morris would throw down the seams and just crush it with Dorsett in the slot, because not only would he challenge over the middle of the field and with those quick get open routes, he'd be down the field vertical. So you could see that with Spafford as well. Whereas Lopez, he's not going to run a 4.8 like Restrepo did. Look, if he produces like Restrepo, I think we're all very happy. But I think he's a little faster than the Restrepo type, not as fast as the Spafford type. So he's kind of in the middle there.
We have almost 1,500 on with us live. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're watching on Twitter right now, remember we also have a YouTube page where we're live every single day, and also have other videos on there that aren't just the normal live show.
Yep. So check out the channel, like and subscribe. I was 1,400 on right now. Another battle with Georgia. First of all, let's talk about some battles we won, right? Which would be, certainly if you're talking about the offensive line position, you went toe-to-toe with Georgia on Jackson Cantwell. He visited Georgia last. Georgia was getting a lot of crystal ball love. Wilfong, Georgia. I don't know this for a fact, but I think that the parents might have been saying, hey, Georgia, they win national championships every year. That's your safest bet. So ultimately, Miami's able to get that one done, defeat Georgia for an offensive lineman, a statement win for the number one player in the country from Nixa, Missouri, going all the way to Coral Gables. So that was a statement win against the Georgia Bulldogs. The next battle you're kind of seeing shape up in a similar fashion. Breck Kolojay, who visited Georgia this past weekend, visited Miami before that, visited Miami a ton unofficially. He's been in Miami a bunch, being from IMG. When he visited Miami, he was there with Jackson Cantwell. Jackson Cantwell was recruiting him hard. He said, Kolojay had this exact quote. He goes, me and you trying to block a 3 technique, a double team is scary. He saw the vision there to be a Miami Hurricane with Jackson Cantwell. That was a great bond there. But the reason he said he didn't commit early was because he told Jackson Cantwell, my process is different than yours. I have to visit Georgia. So this was the visit last weekend. As I understand, Miami is still in pretty good shape. I'll get you the full bank report, but I'm feeling pretty good about where Miami is there. So we will see what happens with Breck Kolojay. but I have a good feeling that Miami can get this one done. Just talking to him, talking to the family, understanding where Miami thought this whole process was going into Georgia, reading the Georgia tea leaves. Miami gets this one done. That is 2 big-time offensive linemen that you have beaten Georgia head-to-head for, neither of which are from exactly your recruiting footprint. Kolojay's at IMG, which is in Bradenton, Florida, but that's really a football academy. He's originally from Denver, Colorado, and I think he's actually originally from Massachusetts. His family's from Massachusetts. They were in Denver, Colorado for work. His dad moves around for work. So this is a city guy, but not a South Florida guy or a Florida guy at all. So you're able to get him. That would be a huge, huge statement against a team like Georgia. Of course, Cantwell from Missouri. So we'll see if Miami can get those done. But if you beat Georgia for 2 guys, and look, Georgia wants this player bad. So is Ohio State. He's rated as a borderline 3-4 star player. That to me is highly inconsistent with both the film, the measurables, and the way he's being recruited by schools like Georgia and Ohio State and Miami. So I put this guy as an elite guard. That's how he's being recruited. That's the schools that are recruiting him. That's how Miami's treating him. You win a battle for Brett Kolojay over Georgia, Pete. I think that's a major statement as far as winning a battle that you're not winning that under Manny Diaz or Al Golden or any of the other guys.
Well, and it's also a lot of times when you win a big recruiting battle like you did with the Jackson Cantwell battle, you see the school who lost the battle kind of go twice as hard to make sure they don't lose it again. Just public perception, and they're not the same exact position because Cantwell's going to play tackle and Kolojay is going to be a guard. But that's the impressive part to me too, if they finish this off. But I agree. I've heard similar things to what you've heard in terms of where Miami stands with him, and I expect them to get the job done.
Another battle on the trenches, but the other side of the trenches, that is James Johnson, defensive tackle, originally from North Fort Myers, which is the west coast of the state of Florida, for those who are not familiar with the state. Transferred across the Everglades, across Big Cypress, all the way here to the East Coast, where he now plays for Miami Northwestern under Teddy Bridgewater. Miami commit Jordan Campbell is his teammate. And this is one of the top defensive tackles in the country. I think he's a consensus top 10 defensive tackle. On three's got him at number 1, I believe, because they got Lamar Brown on offense. Incredible power, 60 in the shot put, one of the best shot putters in the state, and functional power when you see it on film. He's knocking guys back. Very athletic, but I think, he's more knock you back, get around you guys, go through you guys, opposed to just slipping blocks, all finesse. And I think, boom, that's what a team like Georgia, who loves these physical, powerful defensive tackles, why they're so in on this guy. He visited there earlier, I think maybe beginning of June, late May. He's visited Florida, those types of schools. Texas has been in the mix, but I believe Miami has a great, great shot to get James Johnson. Of all the defensive tackles, the Lamar Browns of the world, Bryce Perry-Wright, who's kind of a mixed tackle end. I feel best right now about James Johnson. He's on the state of Florida tour right now. We'll see how that goes. He was in Florida this weekend, but I like where it's been with James Johnson, and that would be a huge, huge addition over Georgia. Again, when did Georgia win the national championship? They had Devontae Wyatt, first round. They had Jordan Davis, first round. They had Jalen Carter, first round. These are elite defensive tackles. And if you really look at Georgia's history, because Georgia's been a good program for about, since Rick got there in the early, really the turn of the century, they've always been good at defensive tackle. Geno Hayes, the South Florida guy, was probably their best one. Should have been a Cane. But Georgia actually, if you really look at it, was not pumping out first-round defensive tackles for a while. If you just look at their draft history, I didn't realize this until I went through it. They really weren't pumping out first-round defensive tackles at the University of Georgia. Once they started doing that with the Devontae Wyatts, with the Jordan Davis, with the Jalen Carters, they won the national championship 2 years in a row. So I think when you talk about schools that know D tackles, it's going to be Georgia under Kirby Smart. They want this guy bad. You do have Florida ties here, which helps. I think Miami's got a great shot to get James Johnson. And if you do win this battle, now you could go maybe 3-0 in your trench battles against Georgia. And that's how you go to the next level.
Yeah, every time I watch the tape, we talk about the power in his hands, man. And they're active too. It's one thing to have the power, but every play he's engaging, he's using them.
100%. And again, knockback. right? It's when you talk about power, what does that mean? It means when he goes, it's not strength, right? People confuse power and strength sometimes. Power is that explosive force. It involves your hands, it involves your lower body, it involves your just fast twitch muscle. It's not all about just how strong you are lifting up a bench. So he has that knockback power that, to me, pro football is different, right? Pro football, there's a parity of power to a certain degree. There's some teams are more physical than others, but there's more parity amongst the trenches and just in general. You still have teams like Philadelphia that win championships with the trenches. So I'm not saying that that's not the way to go in the pros, but really pro is much more, to me, focused on the quarterback position because there's more parity up front. Whereas in college, when you're the more powerful team on both sides of the ball, it's hard to lose. You look at Alabama for 20 years. You look at Georgia when Georgia overtook Alabama. You look at Michigan when they had Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, guys like that on the defensive line and won the championship without being the most dynamic offense in the world. Power, in my opinion, is the name of the game in college football. Even when you look at like an Auburn winning a national championship, a Florida with Tim Tebow, their quarterbacks had power. I mean, how much did Tim Tebow squat? And he was running people over all day. So power, to me, is the most important thing in college football. It's a very hard commodity to acquire because to combine the power with the body type, there's only so many guys like that. A lot of them are in the Southeast. A lot of them cost a lot of money. When the SEC was cheating heavily, they were getting these guys rampantly, plus they're local, so it was easier to get them anyways. Miami's starting to get that with Francis Mauanoas. His game is really a power-based game. Ruben Bain, more of a power-based game. You got Armando Blunt, Hayden Lowe. I think those are more powerful players. So you keep getting guys of that style, winning those recruiting battles, you're going to have a great shot to win. James Johnson, defensive tackle from Fort Myers, Florida. That, to me, would be a very powerful player to add in that mix. One guy I want to talk about, Pete, before we move on, is another battle we've won that we haven't even talked about that much, which is Jontavius Wyman, right? So pull up Jontavius Wyman's film. This is a cornerback from Atlanta, Georgia. He was a Georgia commit, went to the Hurricanes, flipped maybe a month ago. With Wyman, he had visited unofficially while he was a commit. He was not a drop by Georgia, but I think it was one of those situations where Georgia's like, look, man, if you're going to just continue to flirt with Miami while you're committed, just go there. You know, we recruit pretty good defensive backs. We'll go and get
kind of like Javion Mallory.
Could be a similar situation there. But that's, I think, what happened with the Jontavius Wyman. It was not like, hey, we don't like you, we'll drop you. If Jontavius Wyman shut it down and said it was on Georgia's campus every weekend, he'd be in Georgia's class. So cornerback from Atlanta, Miami's able to go in there and get that one done. Georgia's a school that's recruited much better defensive backs than Miami has over the last 20 years, or definitely the last 10 years. So I think this is a guy that you're excited about. What I like about Jontavius Wyman, watching him on film, Pete, we have not had dynamic athletes at corner. Corn Elder maybe was one of those that you could say it was in that category. But I mean, look at how good the balance of this guy. Reminds me a little bit of a Phillip Buchanan type, changing directions. Half points the ball, makes the guy miss fast. I mean, this is a dynamic athlete. And I think Miami has missed dynamic athletes at the cornerback position who score touchdowns. It's that famous stat, right? Miami, when they were 2001, if they didn't score one touchdown all year, they would have gone 8-4. And I think this is the kind of guy that helps you score touchdowns.
Yeah, Kevin Dennis says Artie Burns, I guess, was a dynamic athlete. I think you could argue Tyreek Stevenson as well, and those guys were top 2-round picks for a reason because of those traits. And
look, even then, Artie Burns to me was not, to me, a great ball in the hands athlete. He was a very good track athlete. And he had very good, like when he put his foot in the ground, he'd explode forward. He had speed. He was a bigger guy. But Artie Burns, even in high school, was not out there scoring touchdowns. He wasn't that kind of guy. He wasn't playing receivers. He wasn't playing returner that well. He was a great corner, great physical talent, great track athlete. But I wouldn't call him that dynamic ball in the hands athlete like a Phillip Buchanan, like an Antro Roll, like a Sean Taylor, like these kind of guys. So that I wouldn't put him in that category, although he was very good. Tyreek Stevenson, a little bit more, but Tyreek Stevenson also was not, a guy that was scoring touchdowns at the college level, and more so than Burns, but still not, I think, to where we're talking about. Corn Elder to me would be the closest because he was a great running back in high school. But Wyman, I mean, you see when he gets the ball on an interception, he's got a chance to take it all the way to the house. So to me, that I think is a difference maker there with Jontavius Wyman. Not saying he'll be as good as Tyreek Stevenson and Artie Burns, because the part I'm leaving out is those guys were big, right? Those guys were 6'1", over 200 pounds in Tyreek Stevenson's case.
And with, Stevenson definitely has play strength, like big time play strength. So
yeah, Wyman's a smaller guy, but you have a Jalen Waters. You're going to have size in this class from a defensive back standpoint, plus the guys you already have on the roster. I think with Wyman, it's that little extra ingredient that I'm excited about, being a dynamic playmaker who can, catch a ball, let's say, zone coverage, someone just throws it right to him, the quarterback doesn't see him. Now he's on offense and you can score a touchdown. If you score touchdowns on defense, very, very hard to lose football games. As we've seen with Miami, when Alabama was rolling, they scored a lot of defensive touchdowns. Very hard to lose when you're scoring defensive touchdowns. I think Wyman gives you a little bit of that.
Guys, Tyreek Stevenson, I'm just going to pull this up. Please don't say he wasn't dynamic. Look how he tested compared to historical combine testing numbers here. He's elite. So,
look, he's starting in the NFL. But I look, like Pinellas Kane is pointing out, that Tyreek Stevenson tried to fumble that Texas A&M game away. I agree with you, Pete, as far as just being a physical specimen and athlete, but I don't think Tyreek Stevenson is like get the ball in his hands and he's going to score a touchdown kind of athlete. Is what Antrel Roll, who I see Juan Manuel Venturas comparing Antrel Roll and Stevenson in the chat. I think if you compared Antrel Roll and like what you just showed, the running and jumping kind of stuff and the size, I think if you put Roll and Stevenson side by side, they'd probably be pretty similar. But I think Roll is better. Like Roll would catch even in the pros. I think Roll
the ball skills, yeah.
And just like with the ball in his hands, I actually think Roll, I'm pretty sure, I'll look it up, but I'm not 99% sure, Roll played some offense in the NFL. Like not like
He did.
So Stevenson's not going to be doing that, right? So I think that's more what I'm talking about is Phillip Buchanan returned punts in the NFL for touchdowns. Antrel Roll did what he did. Sean Taylor, we know how good he was with the ball in his hands, both at the high school level at running back. I want to see more. I've been saying this for a while. I want to see more of that at defensive back. OJ Frederiquez, you a little bit of that. He was a receiver in high school. You saw him have a nice return last year. I forgot it was at Duke where he kind of ran the one down and then took it for a little while. But the true, hey, man, hold your breath, put this guy punt returner, maybe a Bryce Fitzgerald. If a Bryce Fitzgerald develops as a defensive back, as a cornerback, he has a little bit of that dynamic ability too, Pete.
Yeah, I saw a comment earlier that was asking about the kick returners on the team and the returners, and basically like it looks like Miami has some, finally has some guys who can really return it. We'll see. I think Bryce Fitzgerald could be that, but I still think overall you need to up like you're talking about here, you're talking about defensive back, but across the entire team, up the team speed.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Pete. And, we probably should get off soon, but I got to do this because now I'm curious. I'm trying to pull up Antrel Roll. We have Antrel Roll's high school highlights here on CanesInSight, the old YouTube. I'm going to send them to you in a private chat because I just want to pull them up and get those going. But I think what Jay Campbell's talking about also, not just the freshman, he's talking about also like you have Keelan Marion, who's an All-America kick returner at BYU. I know like the Athlon and those magazines, I think he's already preseason All-America. They're just projecting him to repeat now as a kick returner. He returned 2 for touchdowns last year. And then Keontae Scott, who was the best punt returner in the SEC in 2023 for Auburn, now Miami Hurricane. I think so they're saying in the comments is not just the guys like Fitzgerald coming up, but the guys that we brought in from the portal have shown they can do that at the college level. So that's pretty interesting.
Definitely. So, D, you want to get to some hits here? Oh, you're muted. D's muted.
I'm trying to pull up the Antrel Roll without screwing everything up. So give me a second.
You got to hit the button. When you pull, you got to hit the button that has a little check that says don't play audio on this window. If you send it to me in the chat, I can. Yeah.
So also share tab audio. I'm not sharing tab audio.
No, don't share tab audio.
Now we're talking. All right, here we go.
There it is.
I think the video, I forgot what song we used on this one, but it was a good one. I want to say it was like what's the 2 Chainz group that was before he was solo?
What was it? Oh, this is gonna make me upset.
Help us out in the comments. What group was 2 Chainz in before he was in? He was a solo artist. It was Lil Wayne. Anyways, that was the song we used for this. But here you see Antro Roll, man. I like to go back. We should do this more
Play
often.
a circle. Play a circle. There it is.
Play a circle. Ray Chan. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think we used player circle for this video, if I recall. But this here you see returning punts. Oh, the chat's going crazy with the play a circle, man. The chat's got us covered. But here you see Antro. Look at this, how athletic this guy was. Honestly, man, this is something I've been doing lately. I go back and watch
duffel bag. You use duffel bag boy on this song.
That's what I'm saying.
What you used. Yeah.
So one thing I like to do is I like to go back and watch these old high school videos of these great players that we got, and just so you could see what we're talking about. Here you see him on offense. You know, it's funny. You watch Roll, things that jumped out, very big. He was big and he's still big. I saw him skiing. I went skiing this year, and Antro Roll is out there, man. The guy towered over everybody on the mountain. Guy's a beast. But he's big. You see it on the highlights. Obviously, he's physical. Look at him just tear this guy apart. But man, very, very athletic and actually not super fast. He's not like pulling away from guys necessarily, but man, he was, when he got the ball, look at the jukes he had, plus the size and just the feel, the instincts, man. He was a quarterback, offensive player. His instincts were just awesome. And that's one thing when you go back and watch these old Butch Davis highlights, and we're going to start doing this more on the show because it's fun to watch, Pete. We should start doing this when we're like struggling for topics because these are all fun videos. But like going back and watching a lot of these old guys for Butch Davis, a lot of touchdowns being scored by everybody, defense, offense. Whoever Butch Davis recruited, you watched their highlights, they were scoring a lot of touchdowns. Buchanan being a big one of those. So cool to watch. Here's South Dade's finest, down south legend. I mean, he has good speed, but I mean, you look at him, it's not like he's like burning guys. It's the strength and the running, like just the running ability. Look at the jukes, man. For a guy that's 200 pounds, see like Stevenson and Artie Burns, this is a big difference between them. Like they weren't doing this kind of stuff. Full speed.
Stevenson was doing some stuff in high school, man. I think you're forgetting a little bit. We went to a game. I forget if that was when he was at was he at Southridge at that time when they played Miami High? He had a couple touchdowns in that game, I want to say.
1,700 on live right now. Someone's probably tuning in right now like, man, who's this guy we're recruiting from the 1990s?
I'll take him.
Yeah, seriously. What year would this have been? This would have been like 2000.
He's built like a running back, though, man. You see him moving.
Yeah, so this would have been recorded 2000, maybe junior year, 99, where all these clips are taking place. So, it's amazing how far like camera. Look at those guys crashing into each other. That's what we need more of right there. So, anyways, Prod by Pack TV saying what in my Chris Verman voice. That's exactly what's happening. Oh, great topic. See, Kevin, man, you're on every day. We appreciate you as a contributor. Now you're producing for us. Who produces better Canes, North or South Dade? We got to talk about that one. Sean Taylor, Antro Roll. I don't know. I think the North's probably pretty tough to beat, though, especially nowadays. I think the movement's been North. But Tyreek Stevenson, South, there's some pretty good ones. Big Mo saying
Sean
South
Taylor
Dade
was down south.
Go to the NFL off that team.
Was James Wiggins on that team too? Oh no, you're talking about the one. Oh yeah. I thought he meant the Tyreek Stevenson team.
Oh, maybe he did. Yeah, let me know, Big Mo, in the comments. But real quick, gotta talk about our boys, the team store, MiamiHTS.com. 20% off, promo code InSight20, your first item. So they always got a bunch of sales going on with the Miami Hurricane team store, that Father's Day deal going on. But really, at the end of the day, you could always use promo code InSight20, whether you're online at MiamiHTS.com or in person in the store right across the street from the University of Miami. Use that promo code InSight20. If you're in the store, just tell my guy Jeremy, tell my guy Harry, hey, Canes Insight, they'll ring you up. They got the button already set up on the cashier. But 20% off your first item. It's deep summer, so you want to get your outdoor stuff, your beach stuff, your fishing stuff, your lounging stuff, your barbecue stuff. Just trying to get set up for the lifestyle, or if you're trying to really get ready for the season, MiamiHTS.com. Father's Day collection looks like it's still up. So if you missed your opportunity, if your dad was out of town, you want to get him while he gets back in town, 20% off the Father's Day collection. And look at all these cool items. Got the Father's Day bundles, some cool hats available. I like that. That's a cool hat right there. You got old school styles. We got new arrivals here. Signed helmets. Francis Mauigoa, he's pretty good. First round pick, get it before he's already in the NFL. And then the throwbacks. Talk about guys scoring touchdowns. How about those two, Pete? Were those guys doing some damage when they got the ball in their hands?
Indeed.
Yeah. So
Trey Moore. Yes, we did speak about. We've had a bunch of questions about Lamar Brown. Guys, we spoke about him in the front. So if you rewind, you'll see we spoke about him early. We're not expecting that to turn Miami's way, though. Yep.
And then Cam McCormick, this is funny. Cam McCormick picked up by the Pats. Appreciate you, Mr. Fletcher. And he's clarifying, not as a player, but in the office, right? He got signed to the front office. It's interesting.
Scouting assistant.
Yeah, he's so old. He's so old. He goes straight into that role. He's seen a lot. The guy's seen a lot of college football. I'll tell you that. He's seen 8 years of it. Not many people have seen 8 years of college football from the field level. So he's definitely got experience in that regard.
All right. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow with more news. I know, D, you have a new addition to the bank coming this week, which will be, as someone said earlier, appointment viewing. So excited for that. Appreciate you guys for hopping on with us today. Like, subscribe, check out CanesInsight.com. Go Canes.
Go Canes.